Good morning, Revolution. Welcome to our regular Friday morning live show from the CPUSA. And I'm here with Scott, Kay, and Taryn. And we are streaming as ever on X, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And you can follow, like our show, and comment and share on YouTube. And you can always retrieve the show on YouTube too. So we hope you'll subscribe to the Communist Party USA channel while you're there. But welcome to our show, and we'll just start. Talk about what's going on in your community this week, or what's going on with you this week, Scott. What's happening in upstate New York, rural New York, I guess it is.
We're building the fight back against this, murder bill that the MAGA right has forced through Congress. That's going to take health care away from people and undermine the availability of care, especially in rural areas. So that's a big issue for us. And other than that, enjoying some nice weather, but getting out there and
Nice.
trying to build that resistance.
Excellent. Okay, thanks, Kay, and Taryn. We have the borough of Queens is really well represented here. Kay, you want to start us off? What's happening with you and in New York or in Mondani's borough there?
Yeah, I mean, as I walk around, I see lots of the signs out. Um, but I know in my union, people are focusing on getting out and trying to reinforce the resistance wherever it's happening. So at yesterday's John Lewis Make Good Trouble March, we had union members out there. I was marching as a CPUSA member, but I always see them out there when I'm out. Um, and the immigrant solidarity section of our union has been very active. They've been going for just over a month, at least, to federal courts to make sure that these immigrants who are forced to appear, often without lawyers, in front of DHS, have some sort of advocates there. And that has been seen in the news. Brad Lander also participated in those efforts and was viciously arrested by ICE. And so, it's real out there, and the union is on the front lines. So glad to share that.
Excellent. Good to hear. And yeah, I know Lander has done that escorting numerous times, but did get arrested that one time. That was really extreme. Taryn, what's happening in your part of Queens or
Well,
in your
well,
life?
no. For the club, we're actually. I think we've already done one picket in front of Target a couple weeks ago, and then I think that this weekend on the 20th there is an official opening of a new Target in Astoria, which is Mom Donnie's backyard, by the way, or Mom Donnie's district, excuse me. And we will be out there actually picketing in Astoria on the opening day for Target, because we as a party, don't forget, are boycotting Target. Because they have left DEI behind. They refuse to accept the woke yoke of history. And so we are out there telling people not to shop until they get a clue. And then there's also, we're fighting against a casino that they want to open. Also, let's go Mets.
Okay. Great. Well, yeah, I think we're in Columbus. We're going to start our Target thing as soon as we get our literature on that. But we had a good trouble rally, a couple of things, an event and then a rally. So, but today we're talking about conspiracy theories, and I think this is something that's been on our minds this week because of events in the news about MAGA, having a little bit of disruption, big fights, screaming matches, in fact, in the White House over the Epstein files. And we'll get to the Epstein files in a minute. But let's take some more general questions. I mean, Kay, we'll start with you. When you think about conspiracy theories, what comes to mind? What are conspiracy theories, and who are conspiracy theorists? What do you think about with conspiracy theories, or do you dismiss them all out of hand?
So I used to dismiss them all out of hand. And sorry if there's some background noise. They're handling the chemtrail distribution outside. Um, but yeah, I think it's very interesting that people who are like, oh, I don't like science, I don't like math, I don't like thinking about politics, When it gets to conspiracy theories, people have a lot of opinions, many of them strong. And so I think what people are trying to do is think about the world that we're living in and how things work, um, and how one can make change. And unfortunately, and kind of frustratingly for me, I feel like with conspiracy theories, people get so close to the mark. And we're going to talk about some of these things in the show, I know. And then they kind of veer off the road at the last minute. And it leads to
Mm,
uh, more frustration because they're trying to make changes. You know, they have a theory of change and of how things work that is
mhm,
just not accurate. And so they go out, they try to make these changes, and it doesn't work the way that they want it to, which leads to more frustration, leads to more, kind of going in a loop with more conspiracy theories. Oh, that didn't work. It's because, then there's something on top. And so, yeah, I think that's how I think about
mhm. Well, Tara, and I always think about theories, and maybe you do this in economics too, is theories are just explanations of observations that you've made. We can't observe everything, but we make observations in the real world, and then we have theories to explain how things got to be the way they are. And what kind of things are conspiracy theories trying to explain, do you, for the most part? What are they trying to do? How are they trying to help us? What are they trying to help us understand?
I mean, I actually don't think that conspiracy theories are meant to help people understand anything. Like, I think that they're actually really distracting. I think of them, I always think about one of the first conspiracy theories that was ever really presented, at least in modern society, which was the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, right? Which was distributed intentionally by the Russian Tsarist government in an effort to sort of divert attention away from class struggle and blame it all on the Jews, which is something that has happened since then quite a few times, of diverting people's attention away from the class struggle and blaming it all on the Jews. I think that people will look at something like the Epstein case, for instance, and feel like some sort of revulsion at it, right? But they are not understanding like the underpinnings of what it is to be a teenage girl in the state of Florida, right? They don't understand the different power dynamics. They're just getting distracted away from these things by putting the blame on one or two actors. Like, yes, we actually do have a ruling class, which is, hell bent on exploiting women and children to get what they want. We can't just put all our eggs in this basket, So I think it's a narrative. It's almost like religion, where you have like an opiate. You're trying to make sense of the world, and a conspiracy theory is oftentimes something that will give you maybe up to, as Kay was saying, maybe up to like 90% of the truth, but will still leave you grasping for that theory of change, which we would have as dialectical and historical materialism.
Mhm. Right. Okay. So they're trying to explain social change and not doing too good a job at it, unfortunately, because it is, as you said, mostly misinformed. But Scott, aren't conspiracies something that actually does happen and do happen in modern life? Don't powerful people make secret plans and try to execute their will against the wishes of the vast majority of working people?
Well,
What do you think,
yeah. Well,
Scott?
I mean, what you're describing is capitalist society, right? Where you have a tiny minority of extremely wealthy people who, in fact, control as a class the state, and are able to use both the state and private resources, the media, etc., to advance and to determine kind of the grounds of ideological struggle and also material struggle for everybody. Um, so that's there is a small group of people pulling the strings behind the scenes, but it's not really a secret, right? It's pretty open. And I guess I wanted to say, when
Mhm.
we think about conspiracy theories, I think we have to put them in the context of a broader kind of crisis of science in capitalist society, or a crisis of the production of knowledge, right? Because we understand, so we're materialists, right? There's an objective reality that exists outside of our minds. Everybody operates in the same objective reality, but we don't all have the same perception of it, right? Our brains work differently. So when we go to produce knowledge about the world, we have to do that collectively. And science the scientific process is about our ability to produce knowledge collectively. And what we produce, facts, are also social, right? So one usual definition of a fact is an agreed upon true belief. So a fact is something that is objectively true, right? It corresponds to reality, but it's also something that everybody or most of the people have to agree that that fact is an accurate representation of reality. And
Hmm.
what we see with conspiracy theories is an undermining of our ability to agree on the truth of sort of statements, facts about the world. So there's this, and this is a much broader question, I think, about the ability, the way that capitalism undermines the ability to produce knowledge collectively.
Okay. Well, back in the days of Copernicus, didn't most people disagree with the facts that he was observing? I don't know. I guess that's spinning us off in a different direction. But I think you're right about. I mean, you have a really good point, Scott, about material reality, and how that is what we really look at. We make observations of what reality is, and we don't make most of the time when we talk about conspiracy theories, we are talking about these outlandish, crazy, speculative ideas. Do you have a favorite, Scott? A favorite conspiracy theory?
Oh, well, I have two. The one that worries me most, that I think about most, is the anti-vaccine conspiracy theories, which have huge implications for public health. The one I find the funniest is the chemtrails theory, the idea that the government is spraying these chemicals into the atmosphere that are going to turn everybody, usually turn everybody gay, is the standard version of it.
I didn't even
So
know
that's
that.
the funny one.
Kay, do you have a favorite or a most outlandish or most difficult to believe
Yeah.
conspiracy theory is going
Uh,
around?
Go big or go home. We all live in a simulation is my favorite conspiracy theory because
Hmm.
we literally cannot access the level of reality that the conspiracists live on, but we can still kind of figure it out because that person over there looks similar to somebody else I saw, and this equation looks a bit strange. Maybe pushing the boundary on conspiracy theory or metaphysical, something you just kind of take on faith, but. I like that one.
Wow. Yeah. Good. Sharon, how about you? Do you have a fave?
It's weird to say favorite because it's sort of like what Scott said, where it's like hard to say that your favorite is like everybody getting measles now because that's like terrible. But I think that the one that I think is the most ridiculous is the flat earthers. Actually, the people who insist that the world is flat. Part of the thing about conspiracy theories, which always gets me, is that, like, okay, so let's pretend like the world is flat and folks are keeping that from us. What's your action to take here? And which is another thing, like, where I
Mhm.
think that a lot of conspiracy theories are bent on like misinforming, but also demobilizing people. Because, like, what are you going to do if the world really was flat? Are you going to go after like the map makers or something? Like, does this prove, So I think that the flat Earth stuff is pretty bizarre. With the second runner up being birds are not real. So
Yes. Well, thank you. I was going to say birds are not real as
sorry.
a favorite of mine. No, that's good. That's good. Of course, it's my favorite because it's a spoof of a conspiracy theory, really, rather than a conspiracy theory. But that effect on political behavior is something that I do want to get to too, because that's really important. And we promised in our blurb for this show that we're going to have a Marxist view here. So, Scott, does historical materialism offer us any like specific concepts, like that we could use to talk about the most outlandish theories that people have? Not that maybe the Watergate break-ins were the result of a conspiracy, which they were. So, there are conspiracies that actually happen. But when it comes to like QAnon, which was a big one and really still effective today, that Donald Trump was going to take power and reveal this worldwide network of pedophiles and destroy them all. That kind of theory. What do you think, Scott? Is there any Marxist concepts that can help us with that? I can't hear Scott.
Yeah, Scott's
Oh,
muted himself.
okay. It's not just me. You're still muted, Scott. Can't hear you.
How about now?
Oh, no, now we hear. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank
Start
you.
over.
I don't know what shadowy actors were conspiring to keep me silenced, but in terms of understanding and combating conspiracy theories like QAnon, there are a couple things. One is that Marxism and historical materialism teach us that there are sort of that history has a pattern, and that we look for
Mhm.
the underlying logic of it, which at the very base is a class logic, right? Between the struggle between the capitalist class and the working class. And when we see attempts to picture society in a way that is completely divorced from that, that's kind of a red flag. Another, specifically, in terms of materialism, is thinking about how these conspiracies spread. And we have to put it in the context of the rise of social media and the kind of behaviors and the kind of content that the algorithms um, reward, in terms of what generates a profit for social media companies, and what generates, what gets people hooked. And So when we think about stuff like QAnon and like Epstein, we see this kind of appeal to people's subjective fears about, and even the vaccine thing, about children, right? The danger to children. And in this context of for-profit social media, that gets kind of turned into a source of clicks, shares, a way of getting people uh, to make something viral, right? So that's another way that materialism helps us elucidate, I think, how these things work.
Mhm. Exactly. Thanks, Scott. Kay, do you want to weigh in on that? What do you think our party line should be when it comes to these, wild conspiracy theories? What approach should we take? I know some of our family members may be imbued in this culture or subculture, I guess, of conspiracy theories. What do you think, Kay?
Yeah, I think we take a scientific approach, which is the same approach that Marx recommended. We don't try to hunt down every single lie and confront it directly. We focus on the facts because there are so many lies. We can find ourselves spending, all this time trying to describe how every single thing is false, when really we can focus on what we know to be true, and kind of let the false things fall out of that. So I think, for example, thinking about historical materialism, we know that there's a capitalist class that has internal, intrinsic motivations to behave a certain way. And so there are some strange things that they do. There are conspiracies that do occur, but really a lot of the stuff that they do, they say out loud. Like in this big beautiful bill that just passed. Um, it says pretty clearly that we're going to cut healthcare, we're going to cut all these different things, and just transfer it to the wealthy in the form of tax cuts and subsidies and all this other stuff. They do these things out in the open, and then they go out and literally smoke cigars, talking about how they're so happy that they're going to be that much richer now. So, when they're doing these things out in the open, we don't have to, wonder about what's going on behind closed doors, because they come out and they do it and they announce it and celebrate it. And that's really what the Marxist approach focuses on, is saying, look, we have these trends in society and we look for the source of it. And some of these things are obscured. Like you can't really go to school and get a degree in Marxism, for example. Um, you have to kind of study on your own, preferably in a group. But these things you can discover pretty openly, not necessarily in a Marxist context. I know I learned about lots of these types of things just by going on the internet and learning it from kind of liberal, outspoken talk show hosts or what have you. But it's there and you can see it, and it's not exactly secret. So yeah.
Yeah. Taryn, somebody just had a comment that it was pretty good. How can people even believe in these things? And I mean, these are the people who go to the QAnon rallies or whatever they have. I'm not even sure, or on the Reddit threads and so forth. They're working class people. They're probably not billionaires. They're probably not conspirators themselves. Working class in the broad. They're part of the 99%. What do you think motivates them? What are they getting out of conspiracy theories? Do you think there's any value for them as people or as social actors?
Yeah, I think there is. I think there is tremendous value for them. But I just kind of want to go back to your previous question about like what does Marxism have to do with conspiracy theories?
Oh,
And
good.
I just want to point out the fact that racism and sexism and abusing children and women and girls is not a conspiracy theory. That's something that's very true. Those are the underpinnings of a capitalist society that exploits all workers. It requires, for instance, the forcible displacement of minorities from communities. It requires the incarceration of mass numbers of young men of color from communities that would otherwise be radicalized communities. It requires the complete subjugation and domination of women, right? It requires the subjugation and domination of children as property. It also doesn't take care of sick people very well. It doesn't. There's a lot of like underpinnings of truth to what it is that people are invested in. Like, yes, as there are conference rooms where people make decisions about the rest of society. That's called like a board meeting, or a shareholders conference. These things exist. It's just that these are not the right. Like, you're looking at individual causes, you're not looking at systemic causes, right? And I think that conspiracy theories offer a very soothing narrative to most people so that they don't have to focus on the broader societal implications of what it means if JFK was murdered because he was against the war in Vietnam. That's something that you have to take action against. Like, if you really do think that chemtrails are turning the frogs gay or controlling the weather, then you're like, well, what's the point of global warming or fighting global warming? Because, they can either change the weather, they can get rid of global warming, or it doesn't matter what I do to try and get rid of global warming because big weather is going to be controlling everything either which way. So it's sort of like a soothing pacifier, I would like to call it, besides like an opiate. It's like a pacifier. It's a thing for self-soothing. It's saying that, yes, we do live in a corrupt society, and the reason why we live in a corrupt society is because people are evil. I wish that was the only reason why we lived in a corrupt society, because I feel like that would make things a lot easier for making it into not a corrupt society. But it brings the attention away from capitalism. It brings the attention away from racism and sexism and displacement and all sorts of other things. And it puts it in sort of a harmless package that you can stick in your mouth when you feel upset and self-soothe with. So, I would say a Marxist response is to get offline, log off, stop posting about it, and actually look into what the underpinnings of these conspiracy theories are, because oftentimes there are like really legitimate grievances that are hiding just underneath the surfaces.
That's right. That's really a good way of looking at it, the self-soothing. I can see that because what it reminded me of is Levi Strauss, the anthropologist, said that there are some things, just like there's food that's good to eat, there's some just ideas that are good to think. They're just fun to think. And I think these conspiracy believers, like the QAnon folks, I think they just find a joy in their wallowing in misinformation with a community of misinformed people, and each new each new revelation is an exciting thing. So they're all reading the Wall Street Journal this morning, I'm sure. Which brings us to the current issue. It looks like MAGA is really Donald Trump has been a conspiracy theorist all his political life. And it seems to be coming back to bite him right now because the cultivation of those conspiracy beliefs that he has helped with seem to be in revolt against him. Scott, what do you think? Is there going to be really political ramifications about the whole current events with the so-called Epstein files? You're muted again.
Any, can you hear me now? Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, anything that fosters, disarray and sort of splits people away or disabuses people of the notion that Donald Trump is some sort of a fighter for the working class and the people and democracy and truth and whatever, that is a good thing, right? So I hope this Epstein thing absolutely blows up in his face. However, I think we also have to beware of, there's a long history of kind of opportunist ways of working for of approaches to the fight against fascism, where we just sort of, or we see people just sort of sitting back and hoping that Trump is going to discredit himself and the extreme right is going to discredit itself, and people will eventually just see how corrupt and greedy and evil and racist and self-serving all of these people are, and that's not true. Like, we have to struggle, right? And I want to sort of connect to something that Taryn and others have brought out. Like, the best way of fighting conspiracy theories is by engaging people in struggle on their actual needs, right? If they're concerned about a conspiracy in healthcare, get them, involve people in the fight for healthcare. Because part of the problem is that, capitalism works to lock people out of both the process of creating knowledge and the process of um, struggling for their own interests and for a better world, right? So that's how we have to approach the fight against fascism. It's not going to discredit itself.
Mhm. Absolutely. Kay, do you think there will be any long-term ramifications from all the conversations we're having now? And also, there is real mystery to be solved. I mean, I think that's why it's so appealing to people because um, every revelation brings more questions rather than answers. And then there's conspiracy theories on top of conspiracy theories because Donald Trump wants to call the whole thing a hoax that Hillary Clinton invented. Like they've the Hillary Clinton and Obama and Biden filled in, created a false Epstein files to be discovered, to a year into Trump's term. Well, what do you think is going to be the long term effect of this? Okay,
Um,
any ideas?
I'm not sure that there will be long-term effects because this has just happened so many times with Trump where, there's some obvious blunder that he makes and he says, there's nothing to see here. And then everybody just kind of moves along. So I agree with what Scott has said that we have to engage people and struggle that actually makes changes and kind of removes the material preconditions that allow people to come up with these conspiracy theories. Like I'm thinking of the Texas floods, for example.
Hmm.
I didn't know until yesterday that people had already come up with conspiracy theories about that being due to radar. And I mean, that's an old school kind of conspiracy theory, but it's so close. Like, there is a weather weapon that the ruling class is deploying against us, and it is greenhouse gases. Releasing all this gas into the atmosphere that makes storms like this multiple times more likely. And instead of that, they're diverted to attack a piece of radar equipment. And so I'm thinking about the Trump stuff. We have to actually engage people on this. Like, we don't just hope that the radar people are going to take out the radar and still get flooded out. No, the community needs help right now, that needs to be deployed. Just like with other things, with the fires and whatnot, we have to engage people and struggle around this. And similar thing with Donald Trump and the Epstein files. Like, there are actual instances of human trafficking that are going on right now that we could address, actual injustices committed against women and girls that we can deal with. And unfortunately, Donald Trump is not on their side. So we have to engage people actively about this and say, maybe it's not a good thing that we get rid of Roe v. Wade. Maybe it's not a good thing that we try to prop up the nuclear family in this one sort of fake way just by talking about it in really scary terms, when everything else in society makes it difficult to live, off of one or even two outcomes, and now you have to deal with children and stuff like that. It just puts too much pressure on people, and then they have to come up with all these wild things about Pizzagate and all that type of stuff.
Mhm. It's true. Well, Richard Hofstadter, the political scientist, said conspiracy theories started in the United States during the Revolutionary War. So, and it's just always been a part of our political culture. But I think we've had a good discussion about what to do and how to face it in our everyday lives, and that is engaging people in and trying to focus on what our human needs really are, and how to fulfill those. So let's turn. I'm sure we're going to be talking about this again in the future, but in the meantime, let's turn to our mailbag question, which concerns the Democratic Socialist Mamdani, who won the primary for the mayoral race in New York. The Communist Party should be against the entire system of bourgeois politics immediately, not as a cheerleader for the bourgeois party. Well, where shall we start? Taryn, would you like to have a crack at this about your neighbor, Mamdani?
Yeah, I don't think the person who's writing it is very serious about ending the genocide in Gaza. I just don't. I think it's really disgusting, frankly, to say that, New Yorkers, the most Jewish city in the world, would come out and support Mamdani. Like, I think it's really grotesque that you would be focusing on attacking Mamdani or trying to belittle the significance of his primary win. This is a person who has said that there is a genocide that's going on in Gaza, maybe not in those words, but who does believe it, that there is an apartheid state, that Israel is operating, and that, everybody who lives in Palestine and Israel should be under democratic control as opposed to apartheid control. So I'm just, I don't really take, I'm sorry, just as somebody who cares a lot about Palestine, I don't really take this question very seriously. I think it's a monumental thing that has happened. I think that it has given people in the United States and Jewish people in the United States an opportunity to say not in our name. And so I just don't know who this person is. They seem really online, probably into a couple conspiracy theories, like is the planet flat or whatever. I don't know. I don't have any respect for this question. I'm sorry.
Okay, good. Tell us how you really feel. No, don't. Oh, we got it. Okay, Scott, what do you think? Is the CPUSA excited about this? Do you find it exciting?
Yeah, of course we are. Of course, we're excited to see somebody who is, openly proclaims themselves a socialist, who ran on a platform of affordability and more public investment, taking on one of the most sort of iconic figures of like the corporate Democratic Party machine, and winning, with a huge percentage of youth vote on the basis of mass engagement. Those are big things. They show that look, we fight in the world where we find ourselves. That's one of the things that Marx insists on, right? We might, of course, we're against the entire system of bourgeois politics. We're against bourgeois control of our political life, but we see developing the forces that can help us move beyond that. And how can you not celebrate something like that? That's my take anyway.
Okay, thanks. Kay, what do you think? what's your take on this? And he's your neighbor too, Donnie.
Yeah, I think this person is not looking at the board of options carefully enough. I agree. Communist Party should be against the entire system of bourgeois politics immediately. But the question is, how do we do that? Right? What are our options? I
Mhm.
I imagine this person has some idea like, oh, we should, get out onto the street and start screaming about how bourgeois politics is not a thing. But there are already organizations dedicated to that, funnily enough, and they have been for decades, and we're still in this situation. So that's just not very effective. I think there is no better antidote to bourgeois politics right now in its kind of overgrown, uh, kind of propped up state than an assertion of democracy for the people, starting first and foremost with affordability, because that lets you start
Mhm.
talking about, how can you afford to be black? How can you afford to be a woman? Or how can you afford to be gay or trans in a society like this? Because a lot of those forms of repression come out in terms of economic policy, and so I think it's an inroad that we're excited about, and we really hope that Mom Donnie is going to deliver. And we're
Mhm.
putting our shoulder to the wheel to try and make sure that that happens, no matter who the candidate is, mind you. We can
Mhm.
be running our own candidate. We can be supporting a pro-socialist candidate that represents progress, or we can be opposing somebody like Trump. No matter what it is, we're putting our shoulder to the wheel to try to push for something
Mhm.
better for people. And I think Mom Donnie is interested in that, and so we're gonna
Exactly.
hold them accountable.
Right, and it's good to put our shoulder to the wheel along with that huge youth vote that came in the primary. That was so inspiring to see so many people come out, so many young people come out in support of Mondani. So even though he's not our candidate, we don't endorse candidates that aren't party members, but it's good to it's exciting. It's really exciting, and it will be exciting to see Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo split the non-Mondani vote in November. So yes, keep your fingers crossed, or don't keep your fingers crossed. That would be a supernatural belief. Instead, get out there and fight. Okay, well that about wraps it up for today. Thank you, Scott. Thanks, Kay. Thanks, Taryn, for coming out and talking about this kind of complicated situation with conspiracies. And in the meantime, we're going to be on again next Friday at 10:30, and get your friends to watch us on YouTube and subscribe to our channel. And in the meantime, stay strong, stay in the fight, as we always say, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.